In this segment, I'll explain what a digital image is. Now, intuitively, you know it, right? It's a picture. But we're going to look a little closer at a digital image to see what it really is. I brought up the Photoshop program here, but I don't have an image open yet. Where do I get images from? Well, by and large, as photographers, they're going to come from our cameras. You know, that might be the cameras on our phone, it might be a digital SLR, might be a point-and-shoot camera, but however we take the picture, somehow we'll get it onto our computer. And once it's on our computer, we might use a program like Lightroom or Bridge or a program to manage our images, but eventually, when we want to do some serious editing, we're going to bring up Photoshop. I'm just going to open a file right from Photoshop, the one of my granddaughter Lena, and there it is. We see it in the middle, and it looks a lot like a continuous tone image, like Lena would look like if I saw her in person. But if we zoom way in on this image, you know, if we really go in really tight, let's zoom in on her left eye there, because that one's pretty illustrative. Now, what we see there is it no longer looks like a continuous tone image. In fact, it looks like this regular grid of colored squares. And in fact, that's what it is. We call those color squares pixels. And to a first approximation, each one of these little colored squares was a photo site on the imaging sensor of your digital camera. We can think of these squares, each one of them, as having a color and a brightness. In truth, if that's a little bit of a simplification, right? When we get the image off of our camera, it's really comprised of three monochromatic images, one red, one green, and one blue. So sometimes you'll hear a color digital image called an RGB image because it's composed of red, green, and blue primary colors. But we'll almost never have to go to that level of detail when we're editing pictures. It's almost always sufficient just to think of a color image as being this mosaic or grid of colored squares. Now, if we zoom way out on this image, in fact, it looks like a continuous tone image, but if we zoom in really closely, we see it's these colored squares. Every one of those colored squares is a pixel, and in the next segment, we'll understand how we manipulate these layers of pixels in Photoshop.